Saint Augustine was a medieval political philosopher whose philosophy was derived from Christianity. He was born to a Christian mother and a pagan father. Paganism was an important belief at that time. And he was converted to Christianity at the age of 32. In fact, around that time only, that was in 381 AD, Christianity became state religion of Roman Empire. Earlier, Augustine belonged to a sect called Manichaeans, which taught good and evil are co-equal. Unlike Christianity, that takes good superior. He also came into contact with Platonic as well as Neoplatonic ideas. In his major political work, The City of God, he wrote this when he was Bishop of Hippo, a city in North Africa. He wrote this as a critic of those who said Rome was lost to barbarians because of its new religion. That was Christianity. So Augustine belonged to that last stage of Roman Empire. Okay. What is his political philosophy and why are we reading it now? His political philosophy covers many aspects. For example, what is the nature of man? What is the nature of man? Okay. He makes certain important assumptions about the nature of man. And given this nature, what should be the political system? What should be the political system? His nature of man is influenced by Christianity. Plus his own reflections. In his book titled Confessions, he makes certain important assumptions. There is one incident he describes that shows to him what is the human nature. The incident that he writes in his book Confessions, okay, is about this fruit, pears. He says when he was child, when he was a boy, he stole pears. But he says it is not because of pears, but because he wanted to steal. He stole because he wanted to steal. Because stealing is an evil, he observed that he derived pleasure not from what he stole, but the fact of stealing. So he was shocked why it was like this. In fact, we even have one proverb in Telugu: stolen fruits are sweeter. That's what Augustine was experiencing. Why is this pleasure of stealing? Okay. So I'm not getting pleasure because of what I stole, but getting pleasure from the stealing itself. Why is it like this? Why should it be like this? And what aspect of human nature that this pleasure reveals? And there he makes certain very important observations which are rooted in Christian theology. He says the pleasure from stealing came from what is called original sin. What is this original sin? Original sin is in Christianity is that Adam and Eve ate this fruit and thereby they lost this forbidden fruit on the instructions of a devil in the form of a serpent. And after they ate this fruit, they lost innocence. They became vulnerable to evil. Augustine writes, so great a sin was committed by Adam and Eve that by it human nature was altered for the worse and was transmitted also to their posterity. So he says, these are all the implications. Man was created good by God. There is no problem with that. But then, original sin, not committed by this particular man, by Adam and Eve, transmitted the propensity to commit sin to all. It means desire for evil is there in all. Desire for evil is there in all. Okay. So that is why he finds that I loved my own perdition and my own faults, not the things for which I committed wrong, but wrong itself, referring to a stealing incident. The evil in me was foul, but I loved it. So Augustine is saying that ability to inherit, ability to commit, desire to commit evil is a part of human nature. And referring to babies, if babies are innocent, it is not for the lack of will to do harm, but for lack of strength. That is, if babies are willing to do harm, it means they are born with evil. Evil is not a result of society. Evil is not a result of socialization process. So, whatever be the historical reasons, man is born with evil. Born with evil. whatever be the reason. But are all like this? Augustine thinks it is not so. But some are saved by the grace of God, though not completely and not forever and not forever. Some are saved by grace of God. So the point here is people are born with differences. Born with differences in terms of good, bad. Born. Not of their own making, but by God's grace. Okay. So he may have explained in terms of God and religion, but what he is saying in secular terms is that there is an inherent tendency to do evil, inherited, to do bad, and some are worse. Okay. And another implication is that it is not your effort. You are born, and then he is also not saying that you can become, not that you can't become, but it is that factors which are not under your control are playing a role. That is God's grace. So you have the tendency, you have the propensity to do bad things. All are not equally bad. And your evil cannot be overcome only through your efforts. I think all these things are implied in Augustine's account of human nature. Okay. And from this understanding of human nature, he proposes a political arrangement. He says, you have both types, but they are living together. But both want order and peace. Some want to pursue self and some want to pursue God. Okay. And both cannot be separated. So Augustine says that because both want order and peace, they accept a state. Okay. In secular terms, this is not different from what Hobbes would say later, that people are at war at each other if not for state. Or Freud's description of man's attitude towards sex and lust. So he is not really different from Hobbes and Freud, except that Augustine is saying it in religious terms. Okay. And good people and bad people, he's saying they belong to two different cities. It is this. Two cities have been formed by two loves. The earthly love by love of self, even to contempt of God, and the heavenly by love of God. So earthly city by love of self, heavenly city by love of God, even to the contempt of self. In the one, the princess and the nations it subdues are ruled by the love of ruling, in the first one, earthly one. And in the other, the princess and the subjects serve one another in love, the latter obeying while the former take thought for all. So, two types of people and two cities. One type, love of self, and another type, love of God. Okay. So, these are not two isolated, different cities where self-loving people will be one city and God-loving people will be another city. All of them are together. Okay. And all of them are together because all want peace and order. Those who love self want peace to get the pleasures of self, and those who love God want peace to contemplate on God. But both want state, they need state, which means they need love for peace and order. And here he says that the work of state is only a small work. It is not so important. It is after all for just peace and order. It is not for any ethical purpose, not for any moral purpose, not for a purpose of God. It is a kind of a simple arrangement. So Augustine thinks that state is needed for the reasons whether they love self or God, all require peace. Okay. And then he says all authority, including that of the state, is derived from God. So man should obey. This is called theocratic view of the state. But Augustine doesn't think so highly of this state. Why is it so? He's saying, as far as this life of mortals is concerned, which is spent and ended in a few days. Why in a few days? Not because life expectancy is low. It is because Augustine thinks life beyond life, or the life after physical death, or the other world. So what does it matter under whose government a dying man lives? So man is dying. Okay. So he thinks of very small role to the state. He doesn't think highly of the state. And what is the nature of state anyway? It is like this. He doesn't think the state has any sense of justice. He says, without justice, what are kingdoms but great robberies? What is a state? It's just a robbery. As a pirate asks Alexander in Cicero's Commonwealth, what I do with a petty ship, you do with a fleet. I am a robber and you are an emperor. This is Augustine's attitude towards state also. So he says states are essentially exploited. And then if you carefully look at their nature. So when people were complaining that Roman Empire collapsed and it was such a great empire, Augustine was writing, what is that empire? They talk about justice, but there is really no justice. And he's saying, look at the naked deeds, weigh them naked, judge them naked. And interestingly, this kind of analysis came to be known as realpolitik, which meant what it is and not what it should be. So realpolitik word came from Augustine, who has a very poor opinion of the state. So which means state is for mundane, simple law and order activities. And state has nothing to do with ethics, God's work, or moral improvement. No. Okay. So in summary, he is saying there is a original sin because of which man is evil, and he can't do away with reason. He can't, that is, get out of the evil with reason. Okay. And so let there be a minimum state, and the important work outside state. Okay. But then if somebody comes up and saying that indeed there is like original sin, indeed man cannot overcome with the reason, but state should do something about this original sin, and it is the task of the state to provide salvation to man. So how would such a theory be? We will look into that.